When I first saw it upstairs, there were boxes of Greek mixed books.
Really? Yeah, you'll help me find it later.
Sure.
Let's start now.
I don't know. I mean, like, all together,
Just say that. No.
I like it. It's that, I guess like 2 months out of like the last.
And to understand what is being Hashmashos, how does this idea come about, what we can use about what can be utilized in this time, this in between time, this transitional time. Just to make it clear, we spoke a little bit yesterday. We spoke about the idea of what together being Hashmashos is. It was discussed if it's a suffix in a mitzvah, it's a suffix in a din, kiveger, and the three types of ben hashmashas. If it's suffix yom, suffix laila, if it's half, it's down of the day, down of the night, just in between time. Or it's vada yom, vada laila, or it's certainly day, certainly night, or it's not day, it's not night. But to make it a little bit clear, just to understand when is ben hashmashas. Does everyone know when ben hashmashas is? Because I think people were talking about ben hashmashas. I just wanted to get very clear to understand when this Zman Ben Hashmashas, and once we understand when this period is, we can understand something more than Oimek, what this idea is. So Ben Hashmashas is like this. When is this time period of Ben Hashmashas? So this, in the Gemara that we learned in Shabbos, there brings out different opinions when exactly is Ben Hashmashas. We pass it according to Yehuda. And there's another Gemara that says that between the sun going down and night is a mahalach dalad mil. Is the movement how long it takes to walk 4 mil. How long a mil is? How long is a mahalach a mil is? A mil is about most poskim rule that mil is 18 minutes. This is from a selection. And the God says it's 22 minutes. How do we have this measurement of mil? How long exactly is mil? Because it talks about a person can walk 40 mil in a day. So you have to divide 40 into 12 hours of Shazmania. So you do exactly 12 hours, or you do when it's light. So you have an erech around this period of time. So there's 3 main shittas, and we'll understand why there's problems with each of the shitta. Let's say the 3 basic opinions of when Ben Hashmashas is. The shitta, the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, the shittas of Rabbeinu Tam, is that you have this period of Daled Mil, 4 mil, and in that period, so it's 4 times the 18. In that time period, you have like this: that the first 3 mil and Revia, the first 3 mil and a third, is still considered day. The final 3/4 of the final mil, of the movement of the final mil, is the time of Ben Hashmashas, and after Ben Hashmashas comes Shkia. After Ben Hashmashas comes Seis Chacham. Which means like this: if you have to figure out in terms of time, you have Shkia Sacham, which we call the normal Shkia, the sun goes down. Then after Shkia, you're going to count 3 mil and Revia, which is going to be about 58 minutes. After Shkia, let's say Shkia is 4:30. 58 minutes later, according to Rabbeinu Tam, is still day. And then starts a period of about 13.5 minutes, which is called the Ben Hashmashas, and then it's considered then it's considered night. Now, the obvious question is, by observation, it seems very strange. In the Metzias, in actuality, it seems very strange. Because if you look out the window, or you're standing outside, and after Shkia, a half hour after Shkia, 45 minutes after Shkia, it's completely dark. Wherever you are in the world, certainly an hour after Shkia. According to Rabbinic Tam, about an hour after Shkia, that's when you start Bein HaShmashos. That's the first thing. It's a question on the Metzias. The other question is, what does this word Bein HaShmashos mean, according to Rabbinic Tam? What is the idea of Bein HaShmashos? Bein HaShmashos between times. Now we saw some of the Poskim bring this idea, and it's brought down. The Maral brings it down. Shmois Lov. That Bein HaShmashos has to do with between. Shmashos Shemesh doesn't necessarily mean the sun. It can also mean the day. So Bein HaShmashos means the time between days. So it's not the time between the sun, the light, and darkness, but it's the time between days. Because normally when we think of Bein HaShmashos, we think about it as a time, which Bein HaShmashos is there's the sunlight, and then there's the sun. They're two separate things. Because when the sun sets, there's still sunlight. So Bein HaShmashos means in the time period, which is the Shittas HaGoinim, in the time period after the sun actually sets, but you still have sun. You still have sunlight. That's the Bein HaShmashos, the same Shemesh. The Shemesh, the sun, but the different types of sun. You have the Karnei HaShemesh, you have the sunlight, and you actually have the Shemesh that goes down off the Oifik. So the Shittas HaGoinim, this is the according to Alter Rebbe, according to many, this is the opinion of most Rishonim. The Shittas HaGoinim is that Bein HaShmashos starts immediately after the Shkia, and it's Mahal Gimel Revim Mil, so it's like the 13 minutes is immediately Bein HaShmashos. And the difference between that time period is because on one hand the sun sets, the sun already went down off the horizon. On the other hand, there's still light, so that period becomes Bein HaShmashos. That's the Shittas HaGoinim. According to the Shittas HaGoinim, according to the opinion of the Goinim, right after that time period already begins night. But that's also a tzarachiyim. It's a little problematic because it doesn't appear to be night. It's only 15 minutes after the sunset. It still appears to be not dark night. So this is on the other hand we have to understand. There's a third shitta which is not accepted halachically, but it's also a shitta of Rishonim. Is the Yerein. Shittas HaYerein. Incidentally, the Shittas HaGoinim was only Maram Alshker was the first one to reveal the Shittas HaGoinim, but it appears that this is, according to many, this is actually the opinion of most Rishonim, most early commentators. The Yerein has an opinion that says that the Gimel Reviyah Mil, when we talk about the Bein HaShmashos, actually occurs before the Shkia. The Bein HaShmashos is the time period of the 13 X minutes that happens right before the Shkia. Then there's the Shkia, right? The Shkia is night. This is the Shittas HaYerein. Okay? We're not going to understand this Shitta. We'll try to understand a little bit the other two Shittas, the other two opinions, which the real question is two things. First of all, it seems to be a steer to the Metzias. It seems to be the opposite of what actually is in existence. It doesn't seem to be a time of twilight. According to Rabbinic time, certainly it's not twilight, it seems completely dark. And according to the opinion of the Goinim, it appears to be still light. How could they call it nighttime, when it doesn't appear to be night? This is one thing we have to understand. Another thing we have to understand, we have to go a little bit deeper, is a very simple question. Bein HaShmashos, we say, is like a twilight, an in-between time. Bein, it's a Bein time, a time in between. And in the evening, there's a Bein HaShmashos, because the sun sets. And there's still light, so we're not sure. We'll see if that's the Makma Safek. It's a place of doubt, but there seems to be a doubt what this time period is. How come there's no Bein HaShmashos in the morning? The same thing, the same process. The sun rises, it's dark. The sun is rising, Zalois HaShachar, and then there's Netzachama. There should be a time period, just like in the evening when there's Bein HaShmashos, which is the twilight. We're not sure if it's day or night. And it has some halachic reasons that it's day and some halachic reasons that it's night. The same thing also in the morning. But it's actually not halachically true. Now, there's certain chumr you don't do, but b'shas adchak, you can do things from alois hashachar, which means that we say that the day starts the moment you see the sun. Right? In the Beis HaMikdash, they used to say Barkai, the person used to call out, the Gemara says in Yuma, and they used to say Barkai, it became lit, the sky became lit, and the right away started doing their karbanas. Which means that in the morning there is no Bein HaShmashos, there is no in-between time. So why in the morning there's no in-between time, and why in the evening there is in-between time? This is a simple shot question that we have to understand the whole idea of Bein HaShemashos. Now, in our Gemara, which is the Bavli, in the Bavli this issue is not addressed, but apparently this is a question that was actually asked in the Yerushalmi. It's interesting that the Sugya of Bein HaShemashos, the issues of Bein HaShemashos, is dealt with in the Yerushalmi, in the Jerusalem Talmud, immediately in the beginning of the Gemara Brachas. Right away, the Gemara Brachas discusses everything that we learn in Shabbos Lamadal is actually discussed in Brachas in Yerushalmi in the beginning, which would l'chur make sense because that's when the topic right away arises. I think there's a Yerushalmi that says like this. No Yerushalmi, that's why I read it inside. Rav Chanina Chavrayin the Rabbanon boy. So Rav Chanina asked the sages, Kamad al Amrit ba'arvis niru gimel kechavim af b'shacham anisana be'emsa rakia lailahi. Mar af b'shachas came. The question was, how come we say that it becomes night? This will be the shittas ha'ga'ayim, the opinion of the Goyim, that immediately when it comes after Shkia, a few minutes after Shkia, 15 minutes after Shkia, right when Hashemashos, right, it becomes night, even though it appears to be still light, we still call it night. How come in the morning we don't have the reverse process? How come we don't have the same reverse process? And the Gemara says that there's a Gzeir Shalom, that it says a Ba Shemesh, the Yatsa Shemesh, the Psukim that says Ba Shemesh and Torah, there's Psukim that talk about the coming of the sun and moving the sun, and just like the Bias HaShemesh, the coming of the sun, which means what the sun setting, becomes night the moment you can't see light. The same, this is what the Gemara answers. The same thing also, Yitzias HaShemesh, when the sun comes up, this is when it becomes light immediately. Sometimes it's there show, but it's trying to show that there's a subtle difference between when it's dark and it becomes light versus when it's light and it's becoming dark. We'll understand what this means, but this is what the Gemara seems to suggest, a type of experiential. It's based on a pasuk, but it seems to say that there's some type of experiential difference when it's dark and all of a sudden it becomes light versus when you're sitting in light and it's becoming dark. And because of that, there's going to be a difference in the time, where here there's a Bein HaShemashos time and here there's no Bein HaShemashos time. Now let's look in the psukim. In the beginning of the Torah, this is a question on Pshat in the pasuk. The pasuk says, the verse in the beginning of the Torah says like this. There was Choshech, then Hashem created light. Then it says, V'yikar Lakim lo'or yoim, u'lo'choshech kar layla, which means that Hashem calls or light day, u'lo'choshech darkness is called night. So what's the definition according to the pasuk Hey in the Torah? Definition of day is or, light. Nothing to do with the Shemesh, nothing to do with the Levana, nothing to do with the sun and the moon. The definition of night is Choshech. When it's light, it's day, and when it's dark, it's night. Pshat. A few psukim later, the pasuk seems to say something else. When there's the creation of the Moar Gadol and Moar Katan, the two great luminaries, it says like this. That Hashem says, creates these two lights, and says, the Moar Gadol should be Moishel Bayoim, the great light, the great luminary, the sun, should be dominant during the night, during the day. And the other great luminary should be dominant by night. So what's the definition of night and day? If there's a sun, and if there's no sun. If there's a sun, then it's day. And if there's a moon, then it's night. But it's not clear, because the pasuk before said that the definition of day has to do with light. And now we say the definition of day has to do with the sun. We know that when the sun sets, it doesn't become dark. So is that time period day or night? According to pasuk Aleph, according to day 1, where it has to do with light, then it should be considered day. But according to the pasuk that says in Shol Bayoim that it has to do with the dominance of the sun in the orbit, that you can see the sun is dominating the planet, then it should be according to when the sun is. The moment the sun sets, it's already considered night. And this, because there's two psukim like this, because there's two ideas like this is the makir of Chazal. This didn't answer the other question in the morning, but this is the makir of Chazal for by night, to say that there's something about this time that we find in the psukim already. We find in the Torah that the Torah is trying to tell us two separate things. On one hand, it says that it's dominated by the sun, and on the other hand, it's dominated by the light. So now the question becomes, once the sun sets, it's still light, what's that time? Does it have a gather of day or has a gather of night? Because from the perspective of the moon, okay, now once the sun sets, now we can see the moon. Now the moon is dominant. This is why there's this dichotomy. So the source of Chazal, the look at Ben Hashmashas as an interesting time, comes from the psukim, because we see these two psukim, these two verses that seem to contradict each other. So, comes out like this, that it's like a suffix. Let's just use this language, that it's a doubt, it's a suffix. Because on the one hand the pasuk says light, on the other hand the pasuk says sun, so therefore we're in doubt. It has the chumrah, we go according to the day, according to the night. But the truth is we can't say this last nekuda, we can't say this last prat. Because in Dinei Torah, this is the Yesod. In Dinei Torah there's no such thing as a suffix. There's no suffix in Torah. There's no concept of a suffix in Torah. In fact, in the entire Torah, this is just parenthetically, it's not a halachic idea, but parenthetically, the word suffix doesn't appear in the Torah. There's no word suffix in the Torah. There's a word in the Torah that's ulai. Ulai yibana. And ulai yirach. There's the idea of ulai, maybe. Maybe is a word. Suffix, there's no marker for suffix in the Torah. Ulai yeah, ulai maybe yeah. The Tikkun HaZohar writes, the Tikkun HaZohar says that the Shem HaShechina, the name of the Shechina, is Vadai. One time the name of Shechina is Vadai, and there's also a name of Shechina that's called Ulai, which means the Shechina is either a certainty or a maybe, but not a suffix. Suffix we don't have in the Torah. What it means like this. L'gabe the Kadosh Baruch Hu, l'gabe the creator of life, you can't say there's a suffix, not a suffix in din and not a suffix in Metzias. There's a language that we have, Kapashmai Gali, we have that Taisis Nechulim, but this comes from the Gemara. The Gemara says that Mi'ika Sveika Kamishmaya, could there be a doubt in front of Hashem, Kaviyachol? The creator of life, if there's no suffix, Hashem created, there's no doubt what this is. There's some type of observation, some type of truth. So there's no makir for suffix in the Torah. Everyone knows this idea that there's a din that suffix deraisa l'chumra. Suffix deraisa l'chumra. Suffix deraisa l'chumra means that if there's a question of a din deraisa, a din Torah, you could go according to the chumra. Suffix derabbanan l'kula, which seems to suggest when you say suffix deraisa l'chumra means that you actually do something. Suffix deraisa, it's a doubt of a din deraisa l'chumra, you have to do something. Which means that the Torah does recognize that there's something to do. In other words, in the world of Torah, is there a marker for suffix? But according to the Shittas Rambam, suffix midaraisa l'chumra is midarabanan. In other words, the Rabbanan say that when there's a suffix midaraisa, when there's a doubt of it, midaraisa, then midarabanan you have to do this mitzvah. But suffix midaraisa, there's no mitzias, there's no suffix, there's no such thing as a suffix. So if there's a suffix, then something's wrong with in your interaction. So of course you don't do nothing. So in other words, suffix midaraisa l'kula. If you want to do it, you don't have to do it. Midaraisa, if there's a suffix, certainly don't do it, because no such thing as a suffix. I don't know if everyone learned this, but there was the Rambam about a tumtum and a droigenis. And the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus writes, tumtum and a droigenis is someone that has two simonim, both of the ish and the ish, a person that's androgynous, someone that has partially male, partially female, or someone that we're not uncertain whether they're male or female. Today we have a whole world that thinks about these issues, but then it was a very interesting phenomenon. So the Rambam rules like this. A zachar becomes, a male becomes an adult at 13. So a female becomes an adult by 12. What happens by an androgynous? What's the halacha? An androgynous become an adult. The Rambam writes, Tumtum androgynous, shahayu ben shtemos shana v'yem echad. The moment a tumtum androgynous, the moment a tumtum androgynous becomes 12 years old, harei b'chesed gedolim, they're a chazaka that they're gedolim. They're a chazaka that they're adults. So what does this mean? Why are they chazaka an adult? This is tumtum androgynous, chazaka of adult. Besides the simonim issue, whether they have to have signs, which is another technical issue, which the Rabbinic is arguing, and the Maggid Mishnah, everyone has this question about the simonim. Let's leave a second the simonim. Let's assume that the moment a boy turns 13, they become a zachar, chesed gedolim automatically, without a simon. Just let's assume this for a second. And the moment a woman becomes 12, she becomes an adult. Here you have an androgynous, which is a suffix, zachar, suffix, nekera, right? What's the halacha? The Rambam says, "Harei b'chesed gedolim." They become a chazaka of gedolim. Why is this tumtum androgynous chesed gedolim? Chazaka that she's a gadol. If you want to say that she's a gadol because she's certainly 12, so legabel dina ishus with regards to the women issues, she's certainly an adult. Then you can argue and say, so it's like a chumrah, because potentially she can also this tumtum or androgynous can also be a woman. So therefore, in regards to women's issues, we can assume that she's a gadol. But the Rambam doesn't say that. First of all, he says, "Harei b'chesed gedolim." It doesn't say b'chesed gedolim l'gabe dina isha. Right? It doesn't say there's a gadol in regards to women's issues. Second of all, if the issue is a suffix, if the issue is a doubt, so what are you going to say? That maybe she's 12? So maybe she's actually a woman, maybe she's 12, so therefore she becomes a gadol. So it should be a suffix that she's a gadol. Not harei b'chesed gedolim. It's a suffix that she's a gadol, because maybe she's half male. So what's the yeshlan? What's the oimek of pshat over here? What is the Rambam saying? The Rambam is saying is when we have a din Torah that's a vadai, we don't take into consideration the suffix. If there's a certainty in one aspect of this dimension, the certainty outweighs any form of doubt. Because in the Din Torah, we don't take into consideration sveikus. In Din Torah. So once there's a chazaka for the aspect of the Vadoris aspect of a Ketana that she's becoming Gedoyla, then we don't take into consideration. That's funny, this is the pshat. Which means that the Rambam is saying that in the world of Torah law, there has to be Vadoris. This is also a philosophical thing. That in Dinei Torah Shebiksav, Dinei Torah, the dinim of the Torah, there's only vados. There's no metzias of sveikus, just like there's no sveikus on the Kabbalah. And just like there's no sveikus, just like there's no doubts with regards to the Boira, the Creator, and there's no doubts with regards to the Torah Shebiksav, which is the Creator's word. There's also no sveikus in the world. There's no such thing as a suffix. In the objective world, there's no such thing as a suffix. The Rambam writes, and Hilchos Nazir is also quoted, Perik Beis Alach Yidal, Chol Dorchem Be'elu B'nyonei HaMitzav Lo B'tiv L'Tadasei. Chol Darga Kvi B'nyonei HaMitzav Lo B'tiv L'Tadasei means when there's a question of what this animal, the identity of this animal, that's only our question. It's not a question of what in the animal world, the kvi is a kvi. It's a vadai kvi. That's what it is. The suffix that we have is a suffix in our relationship to it. There's never an objective doubt on something. The Creator is Vadai. The Torah Shebiksav is Vadai. And the creation from the Vadai is Vadai. Are you following? In other words, in the objective world, there's only certainty. There's nothing uncertain. The whole source of Sveikus, the concept of a suffix, is our relationship to this issue. It could be a suffix in Mitzias, like what this object is. That's only a suffix to us and our relationship to this object. Or it can be Chesar Neidias, a suffix because we don't know all the details, all the variances. But it's always going to be a suffix in our space. Which means that all the Sveikus is Midrabanan. Suffix means Midrabanan, at least according to the Rambam. Sveikus means Midrabanan. Suffix means that it's a case Derabanan. Derabanan talk on the Gavra. Torah talks about the Chefza. Derabanan, the issues of the sages is about the person. The command is on the person, on the Gavra. Chazal have the power to institute that the Gavra should do something, the person should do something. But not that the Chefza becomes a Chefza Shel Mitzvah. That's the way however Hashem created, that's the way it is. We have control in our relationship to objects, not in the objects itself. We can sanctify an object, but it's our relationship to the object that becomes sanctified. We don't have the power to create an object. To create an object to be holy or not holy. It's in our relationship to the object whether it becomes holy or not holy. So it's the Gavra. So the whole Makar Safik is in the Makar Gavra, is in the place of the person. So what does it mean more? It's going to tell us like this, that the idea of Ben Hashmashis, the suffix of Ben Hashmashis is not the suffix. It's a Legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a Vadai. It's a Vadai. What is it a Vadai? Either it's Vadai Yom and Vadai Laila, or it's a Vadai Yom and Vadai Laila, or it's a Vadai, another entity. But the concept that it's a Safik Yom and Safik Laila doesn't exist in the Boira and in the Nivra. It only exists in the consciousness of the human being. So there is the idea of Ben Hashmashis, Legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in Hashem's eyes, because as the Mishnah says, Hashem created something Ben Hashmashis, which means Hashem is recognized as issue as Ben Hashmashis. But it doesn't say that it was a Safik Yom, Safik Laila. It was a Vada Yom, Vada Laila, or it was Vada Lo Yom, Lo Laila. And we're going to see how it really goes to the Vada Yom, Lo Laila. That it's a different Zman. Which means it's a different Akudah. So because we're saying that it's a Vada Yom and a Vada Laila, and we said that the source of the concept that it's a Vada Yom and a Vada Laila, certainly one dimension, certainly the other dimension, is rooted, what's it rooted in the Psukim? Because the Torah itself says that the day is considered by day, light is considered day, and darkness is considered night. And the other pasuk says that has to do with Mishalos B'Yom. Whatever the sun is, that's where it's day. The sun sets, it's considered night. So we can say that there's actually two, I won't say Shnei Dinim, but we'll say it. The Shnei Dinim. There's two different concepts when we talk about evening, night. Because we see that the pasuk itself says that when the sun sets, it seems to suggest that it's already night. On the other hand, when the sun sets, because of the sun setting, it's night. But on the other hand, it's light. So we can say actually that in Dinei Torah, in the concept of Dinei Torah, when evening comes, two things are happening here. One is that it's becoming night. That's one thing, right? Obviously, the night is becoming. But there's another thing that's happening. When the evening comes, it becomes another day. Vayi erev, vayi boiker, yom rishon. Vayi erev, vayi yom sheni. So when evening is coming, it's not only transitioning from light to darkness, it's also transitioning from day, let's say, from Monday to Tuesday, or from day 1 to day 2. Right?
According to Jewish law.
According to Jewish law, yeah, I'm talking about the eyes of the Torah, right? So there's there's two transitions happening here. One is like mitziusi, like what's happening in the physical world. It's light or it's day. It's moving from darkness from light to darkness. And one is that it has another get, it's moving to another night. There's a very interesting lashon in the Rambam, that when the Rambam talks about the mitzvah Sfiras HaOmer, so we know it's a mitzvah to count the Omer. The Rambam holds that it's a mitzvah to say not Torah. It's a mitzvah to rise even today. To count the Omer. But the language of the Rambam is like this. It's in Hilchos Tefillin Musafin, Perek Zayin, chapter 7, verse halacha 22. Mitzvah say Lisper Sheva Shavos Es Tmimus Miyom V'Yachim Semer Tnufa. The mitzvah to count the Omer. Look what the Rambam writes. U'mitchilas hayoyim moinim, you count from the beginning of the day. Lefikach moina balayla, therefore you count by night. It's a very strange lashon, very strange language. The Rambam wants to say that you have to start counting Sfiras HaOmer. Every day you have to count one. Monday you count day 1, Tuesday you count day 2, Wednesday you count day 3. So the Rambam could say you start counting every night. B'tchilas halayla moinim. Every night, b'tchilas halayla. The Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam writes b'tchilas hayoyim moinim. You start counting from the beginning of the day. Lefikach moina balayla, therefore you count by night. By day means the next day, which halachic means the next day means by night. But why is the Rambam saying Tchilas hayoyim moinim? And then he says, and therefore you count by night. What the Rambam was trying to say is, also, that there's two things that happen every evening. Two things are happening, and this is why the Torah, it's not a suffix. The Torah is actually telling us two separate things happen every day. Two things happen. Every evening, two things begin. One is, it becomes night. Let's gather one. The next thing also, it also starts the new day. And maybe they're actually at different times. Maybe when the sun goes down, and the sun goes down, which is Mushelas Bayoim, the sun that's ruling over the day goes down, and immediately, let's say right after the Ben Hashmashas, according to the Goinim, right away it starts the evening, because that is the next day. We asked the question, it's still light. That's not a problem. It's light for the aspect that it's still the previous day. But it's B'tchilas hayoyim, it's already the next day, even though it's not yet dark. So it's not a pilpul. This is what the Torah tells us. Shot. The Torah is telling us that there's two things that are happening during this Ben Hashmashas period. It's both beginning a new day, even though technically it's still light, because the sun is no longer here, so it's a new day because the moon is not ruling, and the moon rules the next day, and it's still considered day because it's still light. So we have to understand why is that. So which things it's still considered light, and which things it's still considered the next night. But there's a gather of Tchilas halayla, Tchilas hayom. That's what the Rambam is saying, and that gives us a better understanding what Allah is saying, is that there's a time of Ben Hashmashas that has a Vadai Yom and a Vadai Laila. There's a certainty of the day and a certainty of the night. There's a certain aspect of it that exists that's absolute. This double idea by night doesn't exist in the morning, right? We don't have a new day by night in the morning. And also, not only doesn't exist in the morning, but we can actually argue that experientially it doesn't exist in the morning as well. Boiker, the Maharal writes, in Gurus Hashem, it's also talking about the Rashbam and Ibn Ezra, that Boiker has to do with the Lashon Levakir, Lahafkin. Boiker means to a bigger behemoth, like to check, to see, to differentiate. That's Boiker. Erev has to do with Iruv. It's like mixed. So it's an Iruv because it's dark. This is the Maharal writes. It's dark, so you can't see what's going on. So there's a mixture of things. Try to talk about this a little bit in the way we experience this. When a person is, let's say, sitting outside and the sun is shining, they're reading a book, and the sun is slowly setting. I don't know if you're a person that's very much attached to your sefer or to your book, but people that are very engrossed in whatever they're learning, and the sun is setting, Usually, okay, if it's your wife or maybe somebody else, someone says, okay, stop reading already, it's already getting dark. You say, no, I can still see a little bit of light. When, at which point, do you say, okay, I can see it is dark? It's a very tenuous thing. It's very, very delicate. It's darkness. The sun sets. Clear, the sun is off the horizon. Now this time it starts the period where there's still light, but it's diminishing, it's diminishing, it's diminishing, it's diminishing. All that experientially, we're holding on. It's not just psychologically, but it's actually our eyes are trained. We're sitting in the light, so we can see. It allows us to see for a longer period of time, which means that the process of becoming night, dark, for us is much. It's much more makam hasalfek. It's much more in a place of doubt or a place of uncertainty, because when exactly is it dark to you? You're following the logic? But in the morning, actually works the reverse. In the morning, the moment it's the crack of dawn, the moment you can see a little bit of sun, it's already, you consider a day. You consider a day. This is the nature of light. A little bit light pushes aside a lot of darkness. The moment there's a little bit light on the horizon, it feels already, the experience feels already like day. So we could argue that the Ben HaShmashos, the concept, besides what we said before, from the Psukim, and besides the fact that we had from before, that the idea is that the night actually starts a new day, and that's where the ambiguity begins. That's where the ambiguity starts in the Torah, because we have this idea that it's both light and it's both a new day. It's also experientially, because in the morning there's no Ben HaShmashos. And that's maybe what the Yerushalmi says. Yitziyasa kibiyasa. When the sun is going down, when does the sun go down? When it's finally down. That's when you say the sun is down. When it's mamish, you can't see anything. Then, okay, finally the sun came down. Biyasa, when the sun comes up, even a little bit is already considered coming up. So that's why there is no Ben HaShmashos in the morning. It's the experience of the way we experience Ben HaShmashos in the morning. And there is Ben HaShmashos in the evening. Besides the fact that actually halachically there is also a different issue, because it's a new night and also a new day starts by night. Okay. Now, Ben HaShmashos is a time period that we just said that is mechaber, that unifies both light and darkness, and also unifies day 1 and day 2, or day 2 and day 3. Which means that if something can unify two things, it must be larger than that. It must be that the Ben HaShmashos is an akuda, is a point that could soivel, that could tolerate both night and day, and could bridge the gap between night and day. There's a famous Shittas Rambam. The Rambam brings it down. The Rashbam actually also brings it down. That Zman is a nivra. Zman is a creation. Time is a creation. It brings down the Moira, Chelik Beis, Perin Vov. The Gur brings it down. The Maggid brings it down. There's machlokes Rishonim. There's interesting machlokes Rishonim about if Zman is pratim, is details, points, or the zerem hazman, the flow of time, is built in mischalek. Is not defined. Doesn't differentiate. This is a philosophical question. When you look at a unit of time, is the concept of time one consistency? It's always. It's a concept of time. It's an akuda. From the beginning of time to the end of time, it was a nivra. It was a zman that was nivra, or zman is chalakin. The Ralbag brings it. The Ralbag in Mechanis Hashem, my Ravav asks this question. The Torah Sahel, the Ramon asks this question. Midas Chayk Arlacher, the Meal brings on all the Rishonim and asks this question. It's a very famous question, the Rishonim. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but this is the nakuda of this question. And truth is, there's two details over here. There's two concepts over here of time. Zman is a nivra, is a creation. Time is a creation. If time is a creation, the definition of something that's created is that it functions in the world of duality, which means it's created of pratim. There's a zerem, there's a rhythm of time. It's period. And everything in the world is period. Everything in this world functions. It's Alma de Period, a world of separation, which means everything functions in units. Even for example, this is a simple example, like you're looking at me now. It appears to you that you're seeing a film, and it's this one continuous observation. That's not true. You're actually seeing pixelated continuous images that is occurring at a rapid speed, and that appears to be, and your consciousness creates it as one story. That's why sometimes you can freeze out and you can fill in details in your mind. Right? So really, there's two madregas, two levels there. One level is that the world functions in Olam period, which means everything is individuated. Everything has a certain space. Time, there's a specific moment now, a next moment later, a next moment later. Each one is a specific dimension. You have this in Zman, you have this in Makom, you have it in Nefesh, you have it in all three aspects of it. Let's say you regard Makom, space. Space also, there's different, the Gemara speaks about, there's Eretz Megadelos, there's a certain type of culture, environment that allows people to be wise, a certain type of environment that breeds certain types of people, there's certain earth that allows for certain fruits to develop, certain vegetation, of course, right? Every place has a very specific indigenous quality. And same thing also with Nefesh Adam, the persons, every single individual person is different. But all these also have an underlying nekuda, an underlying point of achdus. We'll lose the language of the Gemara. The Gemara talks about earth, and the Gemara says Sadan Arachadu, that all the earth of the planet is the same, which means it's individuated, but there's a nekuda of achdus, there's a point of unity that exists in all the earth. The same thing also with the Nefesh Adam. There's period, there's separation, every individual person is distinct. And then there's a nekuda that we're all misachad. And it's like it flows. It goes from Aleph, from 1 to Beis, from Adam to Adam Chava to 3, to Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, to 4, to Sarah Rachel Leah, to 12, which is the Gvula Alachsim, the 12 points in a cube, to 600,000. This is all dimensions, the way it's flowing outwards, but the origin is one point, because everything originates in Hashem Echad. So the origin of everything, the underlying quality that exists within Olam Shana Nefesh, time, space, and consciousness, is the Nekudas HaYichud. It is Nekudas HaYichud, and that Achdus is then broken down into many details and flows outwardly. Zman is Ratz B'Shuv. Zman is a moving and returning. The flow of Zman is a Ratz B'Shuv. In Oisa Kabbalah, in the language of Kabbalah, we'll see soon why this is Negea, Zman is a chibur Shem Ma'am Ban. The Shem Ma'am Ban, which is two, the name 45 and 52, that's obviously the numeric value, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, different formulations. But Shem Ma'am Ban, it also refers to Ma, means what, which the numeric value of Adam is Ma, the numeric value of a person is what. The Metzias of Adam is Ma. The definition of a person is a questioner, asker, an inquisitive, something that's asking. And the definition of a behema, ban, which is the same numeric value as the word behema, is bama. Is in it, is it, is the question. It is what it is. And the human being is a striver, someone that's looking forward. So the ba naman, the man the ba, ban, is actually mashpia makabo, the giver and the receiver, and the flow of energy is the past, is like the mashpia, the giver, that impregnates the future, which is the nekeva, the female. And that's the flow of time. The zerem azman, the flow of time, functions in this duality of present impregnating the future, which the present is the effect of the past. So it's the male, the female, to the male, to the female, the male, to the female. That's the way time is moving forward. And this is the mashpia makabel, the dynamic of time moving in this order. And just like with the creation of Adam Chava, there's the creation of Zachar and Nekeva Bar Oisim as one androgyne, as one being, not two separate beings, where it's Ezer connected, they're corresponding to each other. Mashpia Makava are standing outside each other. There's an akuda, there's a point where Adam and Chava are Mesiacha, they're one. So just like it's in nefesh Adam, just like in the level of soul, in human consciousness, there's an aspect within the human dimension where the male and female are unified as one. That's the Adam Achava Koidim before the separation. The same thing also in Zman. There's an akuda of Zman, there's a point of Zman that's beyond the Mashpi and Makabal of Zman. That actually unifies the Mashpi and the Makabal. We don't understand this fully, but this is the Nakuda. This Nakudas HaZman is not a Safik Yom and Safik Laila, because we said that that there's no such thing as a Safik Kamishmai. There's no such thing as a doubt in the world of Torah Shemiksav, in the world of Hashem. It's a Vada Yom and a Vada Laila, or a Nakuda that has both day and night, and is biyachid these two pratim. It's not only unified day and night, but also unifies day one and day two. This is the Nekudas HaZman. This Nekudas HaZman is revealed in Ben HaShmashos. Some of you learn this Gemara, but this is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says like this. Shal ben dama ben achoisi shall be shmal as be shmal. Kagoy nani. Shalamadati kol HaTorah kula. He asked Rabbi Shmuel, he said, like me, someone that learned the entire Torah. Kol HaTorah kula. I learned the entire Torah. Ma lim chachos yivanis. Can I learn chachos yivanis? Can I learn Greek philosophy? Korala mikazeh. So he answered him. Lo yamur sefer Torah zeh v'picha v'gisu yom v'layla. The pasuk says that you have to learn Torah yom v'layla. So say bodek shah she'ena loy min yom v'layla. Go find a time that's not day and not night. V'lim v'chach yivanis. And go learn the Greek philosophy. Rashi says, say your body, davar shelo yiboilam. He tells him, go find a time that's not day and night. He's basically pushing him aside. He's telling him, there's no such time. You're never going to find a time that's not day and it's not night. So therefore you can never learn it. But if he wanted to tell him that, he could have told him, don't learn. What does it say in body? Zman. Shaloi yom v'loi laila. The mitzvah Talmud Torah is in the mitzvah v'gisu v'yom v'laila. The mitzvah, or it means by day and by night. You see what's the difference? Obviously, the difference we're talking about it's not day and it's not night. But how does it work? When the Torah says v'gisu v'yom v'laila, you should learn Torah by day and by night. Is the Torah saying you should learn Torah always, or is the Torah saying you should learn by day and by night? And the truth is, this is Shagasaya. Shagasaya doesn't talk about Torah. He talks about the mitzvahs, Schiris Tzim, Shagasaya in Siman Yud Beis discusses about the mitzvah of Krishma, the mitzvah of Schiris Tzim, and he says, when the Torah says as a mitzvah you should do something by day and by night, is it a mitzvah say Shaloy Hazan Grama, or is it a mitzvah say Shazman Grama? When the Torah says you have to do something by day and by night, is it a mitzvah that's always? Because by day and by night, so you always have to do it? Or no, it's a mitzvah by day and a mitzvah by night. But it's not always. And the chiluk would be, when the Torah says that you have to do something by day and by night, if women are obligated, because a woman is not obligated to say a time-bound mitzvah. And if the mitzvah is you should learn by day, you should do it by day, and by night, it's not tmidius. Yes, it's the same thing also begins to Yom Laila. What the Torah is saying is, it is mitzvah tmidius. I'm not saying it's not mitzvah tmidius. But the Nekuda, conceptually, is that there's a Yisra Bava Yoimon and there's a Yisra Laila. And then there's a Bodek Zman Shaloy Yoim V'Loy Laila. There's a time that's not day and not night. No, this song's far more specific. Torah Shebiksav is a medrash that says that when Moshe was on the mountain, how did Moshe know if it's day or night? How did he know it's day or night? It says that when he was learning Torah Shebiksav, when he was learning the Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, he knew that it's by day. When he was learning Torah Shebakah, he knew it was by night. Torah Shebiksav, we said, is Torah Havadai. Torah is Havadai. It's the Torah of the certainty. It's the Torah of the Yoim, of Oyer. Torah Shebiksav is not a question. It's not a rebuttal. It's not an argument. Torah Shebiksav is divine revelation It's oir. Torah Shabbat Peh is a Alma Hilchum B'Choshech V'Ro Oir Gadol. The Chumah says, a nation that goes in darkness and finds a great light, do Torah Shabbat Peh. That's Torah Shabbat Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Machshakim Hashivani zu Talmud Bavli. Torah Shabbat Peh, the definition of Torah Shabbat Peh is you're going through Choshech, you're going through darkness, to reach the light. How does Torah Shabbat Peh start? Torah Shabbat Peh starts with a question. It's a question. How does the Gemara start? Tana Hechikoi. Where do we learn this in halacha? The definition of Torah Shabbat Peh starts with a question. The suffix Torah Shabbat is Vada. It's a Torah Savada. That's Torah of Yom. That's the Torah of the day. We can see about Yom of Alayla. There's a mitzvah to learn Torah by Yom. That's the Torah Shabbat and Torah Sayom. Then there's Torah Shabbat Peh, which is Torah Alayla. It's Torah Zachoshech. It's a Torah that comes with Chak Shivani. You start from a Holchem B'Choshech. You start from a suffix, and then you reach a psak. So from suffix you make it to psak. But the kavanah of the suffix is to get to the psak. The question is to get to the point. And the whole Pulish Torah, the whole idea of exerting yourself and creating pilpul is to get to the point of the oil. The Rizal writes that one of the kavanas, one of the intentions to learn pilpul is to mavatal the klippa. That there's a klippa which is a question mark, a sheila, a question mark which is goals, an uncertainty, you're separated from something, and then comes the clarity, which is tzim mishpat pada. With the clarity, you reach your pada. You have redemption. The redemption of the answer. The question mark is the goals. Redemption is the answer. That's the Torah Shabbat Peh. So we have the Torah of Vadai, which is Torah Shabbat, which is Yom. It's there. Then we have the Torah of Laila, which is the Torah to get that the suffix is only, the question is only in preparation for the answer. The doubt, there's no inherent value in the doubt. The value of the doubt is to get to the certainty. The question is to get to the answer. So he asked him, Rabbi Shmuel, Anisha Lamati Kol HaTorah Kula. I learned Kol HaTorah Kula. What's Kol HaTorah Kula? Kol, we make a shtickle drash, but it's the Maral writes that Kol, the Aleph Beis, is the letters. All the letters in the Aleph Beis have Mashpia and Makabel. There's Mashpia letters and Makabel letters. The first letter in every unit is the Mashpia. Aleph is Mashpia, that's why it's an open letter. And it's Mashpia to Beis. Beis is like a vessel. Gimel is a Mashpia letter, and Dal is like a vessel. Hey is Mashpia, and Vav is a vessel. Same thing, Zayin, Ches. All the Mashpia and Kabel, each one has a receiving, a moving outward, and one is receiving. The Maral writes that there's another way of looking at Aleph Beis, is that Aleph, you take the whole Aleph is 22 letters, you divide them in half. The first 11 letters is Mashpia, and the second 11 letters is Makabel. Which means that the level of Mashpia is Yasha or Yasha direct, it's flowing in a direct path, and the Makabel is flowing the opposite direction, from Taf to Lamed. The middle two letters, that's Mechaber, the Mashpia, and the Makabel is Chaf and Lamed. So this is what his question was. Ani shalomadi kol HaTorah kula. I mastered kol HaTorah kula. I mastered the Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. I have the Torah Savada of Torah Shabbat, and I also have the Makam HaSafik to reach the Vada of Torah Shabbat Peh. Am I allowed to learn Chacham Zivanas, which is the Iyyun HaSafik, in the words of the Radzina, the real place of doubt? So he told him, go find a place, Shaloi Loim V'Loi Laila, and there you can learn the Chacham Zivanas. It's not even like this. That there's an akuda, the world functions in a place of multiplicity, of apparent multiplicity. There's darkness, and there's light. There's Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat. There's revelation, and there's innovation. And they seem to be, the Mashpia and the Makabel, they're two separate dynamics. Time also works this way. There's the Avar and there's the Asid. And we're in between. We're moving from the past into the future. That's one Nekudas Zman. But then there's a point within time, just like there's a point within Makim, and there's a point within Nefesh that's connected to the Olam HaAchdus. And if you're connected to the Olam HaAchdus, then there's no period. There's no Oyer V'Choshech. There's no Yom V'Layla. It's Yom V'Layla together. It's not the separation. There's no Lahavda Ben Yom V'Layla. There's no separation between Lahavda and Yom. Where is that Nekuda? That's in Ben HaShmoshes. The Ben HaShmoshes is time. Conceptually, I'm not saying literally. Conceptually, the concept of Ben HaShmoshes is that not only it ties night and day, it also ties day 1 and day 2. What's mitzaref? 2 days. The Nekuda that's mitzaref, the Nekuda, the point that unifies that is that inherent within the creation is the Olam HaAchdus. In the depth of creation is also the point of unity. And he's telling you that if you can find a unity within yourself, if you can find the Achdus, Pnimi, in Nafshi, the Nafshistic level of Achdus, if you can find that Achdus, then you will find the Achdus also in Zman HaMakom. You will find a time to learn Chachma Yavonis. Because the Torah that you're going to learn, the Torah Sabriya, which is the Torah of the Bria, which is the Ilon of Safik, will also become Ilum Avadai. You're able to go into the Makom HaSafik, not because you're going to the Safik to try to find the Vadai. You will always be connected to the Vadai, you always see the Vadai in the Safik. And that's the answer to his question. And this Yeshloimeh is actually the oimek of what the idea of Ben HaShmoshes is. Ben HaShmoshes is a time, a concept, a construct that Chazal see from the Psukim, where it's an intermediary time, it's a transitional time, but it's a time, a conceptual idea of time that is able to unite things that seem to be opposites. If it's day 1 or day 2 or light and darkness, there's a conceptual idea, there's an achdus in the Bria that allows to find the achdus with everything that's been created. And this Asar, the Maral talks about Asar, Dafkid Asar. The Asar means that within the world, there's Asar is like the full dimension of this world. There's properties within this world that they're not miraculous per se. Ksava Michtav is not miraculous per se. It's language, it's letters. But there's something miraculous in the way they're used. If through Ksava Michtav and through these concepts, we actually create Achdus. We're able to create unity. We have to understand how every single concept is connected to Achdus. But the idea of Asar, that things within creation, it's not something miraculous that shatters nature. That's not Achdus. If it shatters the nature, it didn't say Asar Dornim Ben HaShmoshes, and one of them is Kiryas Yamsuf, because that broke the nature of the universe. We're saying it's things within the nature. There is a Piyah Be'er. There is a Piyah Asim. There's something inherent within the nature, and in that nature, if you go deep enough, and hard enough and long enough, you'll find the Nekudas HaAchdus in that, and you're able to do whatever you want to do, but you're able to connect. If you're in the place of the Achdus, you're able to elevate all the Ilun HaSafik and all the place of doubts. And Meir Rimenu, which I can see a time that's Lo Yom V'Lo Laila. That's the Nekudah of Lo Yom V'Lo Laila. There's a Zerem Azman, the way we look at it today, that there's a Golus and there's a Gula. The Golus means that we're working towards something. There's a passing of the future. We're working towards the future. And then there's going to be revealed a time of Olam HaAchdus that's not day and not night. It's Lo Yom V'Lo Laila. It's the Nekudas HaBriya that's higher than time, higher than past and higher than future, and it's only now.